All right, well, it's Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day, depending on how upset you get when you see a drag queen with a book. And speaking of white conservatives, they're celebrating in the usual fashion by arguing sanctimoniously on the internet about something that barely affects them until they reach their daily quota of impotent rage, one of their proudest traditions. You know, for me, when all this first started, I was surprised to learn that white people cared about Columbus Day, because, like, I'm from the South, and before it was a culture war bullet point, I never met a single person who gave even a macaroni noodle of a damn about Columbus Day. I didn't. Maybe it's because white Southerners don't do the whole European heritage thing. Like, the closest we get to being like, I'm Irish, I'm Italian, is go Vols, roll tide. Like, that's our culture. But either way, nobody cared about Columbus Day. Right? So over the years, when natives started being like, hey, you know how y'all genocided us and took all of our land, and all we've ever gotten in return is casinos and part of Oklahoma? Yeah, well, we have one other minor request. Could we have Columbus Day? When I heard that, I was like, oh, you mean objectively the most insignificant holiday on the calendar? Yeah, that seems more than fair. I can't imagine anybody's going to mind that, but boy, do people mind. Now, at first, it was just the spaghetti Americans who got pissed off, right? Because they cared about Columbus already, I guess. So when this first got brought up, they were like, Mamma mia, it's our culture, right? You know how they sound. And when other people were like, well, maybe it shouldn't be your culture to celebrate a psychopathic genocidal slaver, they were like, hey, come on, it was the past. Everybody was doing it. You know, the other way they sound. And look, fair enough. I guess most historical figures are pretty nightmarish. So if the Italians are dead set on celebrating Columbus and or their heritage, I guess they can. It just don't need to be a federal holiday, does it? Feels to me like it should be something more like St. Patrick's Day. Like a day that means something to one small ethnic demographic and that the rest of us honor by getting hammered drunk and caricaturizing their culture directly to their face. The American way. Right? Like in the future, the rest of us could celebrate Columbus Day by screaming with our fingers or starting a fight over a pasta recipe or moving back in with our mother, you know, Italian stuff, right? This is a compromise we can offer the Italian people because I guess this means something to them. But to all the other types of white people getting up in arms about this, just hush. Y'all don't care about Columbus Day. You only pretend to because it's an opportunity for you to engage in two of your most sacred pastimes, thinly veiled racism and owning the libs. All right, that's the real meaning of Columbus Day to most of y'all. It's a day where you go on the internet and call Indians savages and liberals queers and convince yourself it's an intellectual stance you're taking while you do it. All right, so I'm just saying, maybe in the future, look, maybe Indigenous Peoples Day is the second Monday of every October, right? It's a federal holiday where this country honors those who were here first. And Columbus Day is like every October 12th, and it's just a big old gabagool pizza party for whoever wants one, right? Like, how about that? How's that sound? Sound good? All right, let's try that. What's up, YouTube? I'll be back with more in just a second, but I want to let you know that this here rambling of mine is once again brought to you by the good folks at Private Internet Access, the world's most trusted VPN provider with over 30 million downloads. What do you need a VPN for? Well, there's a host of good reasons. Here's a fun one for you. You can use a VPN to log on to Netflix from any country on earth. That's right. You know, why would you do that? Because they got different stuff on Netflix in different countries. Over in Sweden, you wouldn't believe the crazy stuff they got. You can't watch Rick and Morty on Netflix here, but you can do it in, I don't know, Australia, somewhere else. You can find a place to do it. And that's what your VPN can do for you. But it goes way beyond just that. It's also for safety reasons. It's a shady time out there on the internet. People are prying into your digital business. You can't have that. Well, PIA's VPNs hide your IP address and encrypt your internet connection, thus shielding you and your digital privacy from the prying eyes of the nefarious types of the online world, okay? Also, now you can use one PIA account to safeguard all of your devices. I got every one of the devices in my house on my PIA account. Works like a charm. So if that sounds good to you, here's what you can do. Click the link in the description below to try Private Internet Access today for 83% off and 4 months free. Signing up always includes 24/7 customer support and a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if that sounds too techie to you or anything like that, well, it's not. Look, here's the app. There's the button. You just push the button, and just like that, it's on, it's running. It couldn't be simpler. So try Private Internet Access today. All right, YouTube, and we're back. You know, I know people, the conservatives hear this, get pissed off. They're like, well, you're bitching sanctimoniously on the internet. And you're like, yeah, but I make jokes while I do it. I make it funny, so what are you going to do? But anyway, their stance with a lot of this is like, oh, you talk about how we just rage against stuff that don't even matter, but we're not the ones who brought it up. Liberals are the ones who, everything was fine until liberals just had to start stirring the pot and make something out of nothing. Everything was just fine. It's like, dude, people pointing out wrongs that should be righted or things that have been messed up that they're now allowed, they have the social capital to point out publicly, is not the same thing as just trolling you for internet clout. All right, it's not what it is. These people, it means something to them. It's not meant just to piss you off. So it's not the same thing. Like, again, I'm from the South, and in the South for a long time, a lot of states, they called Martin Luther King Day Robert E. Lee Day. Right, so with these conservatives, would they say that black people finally being able to point out, like, hey, that's messed up, that don't make us feel good, you shouldn't do that? Would these people say that that's just like woke crybaby bullshit that's just meant to piss them off and no one even really actually, you know what, don't even answer that question, I don't want to hear it. But I'm just saying, it's not the same thing. And then the whole idea of like canceling historical figures, it is weird, right? Because I mean, like President's Day, one of those two dudes had dentures in his mouth made out of slave teeth. It's like, ugh, it's not great. You know, when it comes to history, you will have that sort of thing. And by that sort of thing, I mean atrocities beyond comprehension, okay? You'll have that when it comes to history. But it's Washington and Columbus, I don't know. I would argue in terms of legacies, you know, Georgie Dubs giving the Brits that L and establishing democracy as our first president is a scotch more important than Chrissy C getting lost in the Caribbean 300 years before we even became a damn country. You know, plus, on the other side, George Washington's, you know, crimes were unfortunately fairly standard for his time. But dude, the shit Christopher Columbus was doing, even other Spanish colonials were like, Dios mío, right? Like he was freaking people out back then. All right, so it's not exactly the same thing, all right? But, you know, like I said, I don't know. It's weird for me to even care about Columbus or Columbus Day because where I'm from, the irony is, I think, you got a lot of like hardcore MAGA conservatives in the South right now who fight to the death over Columbus Day, who I know for a fact never cared about it before it became, you know, a liberal conservative divide thing. But the irony here is that I know that if Columbus Day had always been Indigenous Peoples Day, it probably would have been a pretty big deal with white people in the South, because they've always been pretty obsessed with like Native American stuff. You know what I mean? Every damn white conservative I know claims to be like, you know, 1/8 Cherokee or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody in the South is like, yeah, my mama's a quarter Sicilian. Why do you think we love meatballs so much? You know what I'm saying? Like people down there have always loved Indian stuff. So if it had always been Indigenous Peoples Day, they'd probably be way more culturally attached to it. And that's one of the great ironies here. But I don't know why I point things like that out, because as we all know, these people are fundamentally immune to irony. Either way, look, taking a little holiday opportunity to point out some silliness and some absurdity before we undoubtedly dive back into the hellscape that is the forthcoming election here in the soon to be weeks. That's a weird way to put it, but I'll be here for yuns. If you're here for me, I appreciate you being here. Look, I'm gonna put these things up on the screen. There's a link to my special. You can subscribe to the channel so you don't miss one of these or podcast episodes and whatnot. The important one to me, the other little circle or square there, is TreyCrowder.com, where you can see tour dates. I do stand-up comedy. If I'm coming near you, come see me. If you like this, I think you'll like that. It's a good time. Either way, you keep watching these, I'll keep making them. We'll see what happens, y'all. Love yous.